3 weeks ago, I needed money fast. Not want, needed. The kind of desperate that makes you answer job postings for overnight shifts at 24-hour laundromats on Riverside Drive. The kind where you don't ask too many questions when the pay's $15 an hour and they'll hire you the same day. Technical school had been a mistake. 2 semesters of automotive repair before I realized I couldn't afford to keep going. Couldn't keep borrowing money I'd never pay back. My hands were good with engines, but my bank account wasn't good with anything. So there I was, walking into Sudsy's laundromat at 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, wondering what kind of people wash their clothes in the middle of the night. Turned out, not many. The place sat wedged between a closed-down pizza joint and a pawn shop that never seemed to have customers. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that greenish glow that makes everyone look sick. 24 washers lined the left wall, 12 dryers on the right, industrial gray carpet that had seen better decades. The smell hit me first. Not just detergent, but something underneath, something stale and wrong, like water that's been sitting too long. Judy Sanders was waiting by the change machine when I walked in. 40-something, practical shoes, the kind of tired eyes that said she'd been running this place longer than she wanted to. She handed me a polo shirt with Sudsy's embroidered on the chest, and a name tag that said, Maxwell. "Simple job," she said, not bothering with small talk. "Keep an eye on things. Help customers if they need it. Clean up messes. Lock the door at 6 a.m. Her voice had that flat quality people get when they've explained something too many times. Then she handed me the card, laminated. White background, black text. 6 rules typed in Arial font like a grocery list. I figured it'd be the usual stuff. Don't steal from the register. Don't let people sleep in here. Call if something breaks. I was wrong. Read these, Judy said. Follow them exactly. No exceptions. Rule 1. Never open any washer that starts itself. If you didn't see a customer put clothes in and start the cycle, leave it alone. I looked up at her. What do you mean, starts itself? Just what it says. She wasn't smiling. Sometimes machines turn on by themselves. Mechanical issue. Leave them be until the cycle finishes. Rule 2. If you hear sounds from the back storage room between 2 and 4 a.m., ignore them completely. Do not investigate. Do not open the door. What kind of sounds? Doesn't matter. You don't hear anything between 2 and 4, nothing at all. Rule 3. Stay out of the employee restroom after midnight. Use the customer restroom if needed. Rule 4. If the lights in the building flicker 3 times in a row, count to 30 before moving from wherever you're standing. Rule 5. Do not approach washer number 7 if its door is open and you can see clothes inside, but no customer is present. Rule 6. If anyone asks about previous employees, tell them you're new and don't know anything. I read through the list twice. Each rule seemed more ridiculous than the last. Is this some kind of joke? Judy's expression didn't change. Do you want the job or not? I needed the job. That was the problem. $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. $600 a week, minus taxes. Enough to keep the lights on and maybe buy groceries that weren't ramen. So I nodded and slipped the card into my wallet, figuring these were just the quirks of working for someone who'd been in the business too long. The first night was quiet. A few customers trickled in. College kids washing clothes at 1 a.m., a nurse coming off a late shift, an old man who brought 4 loads and sat reading a paperback western until they finished. Nobody bothered me much. The washers hummed their cycles. The dryers tumbled. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. I spent most of the time walking circuits around the building. 24 washers to check, 12 dryers to monitor. Sweep the floors, wipe down the folding tables, empty the trash. Simple enough work, and I thought maybe Judy was just one of those paranoid small business owners who made up elaborate rules to see if employees would follow them. The second night changed everything. I'd been doing my regular circuit, checking machines, making sure nothing was overflowing or making weird noises. It was around 1:30 a.m. 3 customers in the place. A woman folding towels by dryer number 4, a guy waiting on a wash cycle while scrolling his phone, and someone I hadn't seen clearly using the customer restroom. When I walked past the washers on my next round, number 7 was running. The thing is, I'd checked that row maybe 20 minutes earlier. Every machine. Number 7 had been empty then. Door open, drum dark, no clothes inside. I remembered because I'd noticed a small stain on the inside wall of the drum and made a mental note to mention it to Judy. Now it was spinning. Full cycle, sudsy water visible through the glass door. I could hear the agitator working, clothes tumbling around inside. Must have missed a customer starting it, I figured. Maybe while I was helping the woman with the towels, someone had loaded it up and I just hadn't noticed. These things happen when you're new. But something nagged at me. The rhythm was off, too aggressive, like the machine was working harder than it should, and there was a sound underneath the normal washing noise, a wet slapping like something heavy hitting the sides. I checked the customer log. Nobody had signed in for washer 7. That's when I remembered Rule 1. Never open any washer that starts itself. If you didn't see a customer put clothes in and start the cycle, leave it alone. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, watching the thing spin. The woman finished her towels and left. The guy's wash cycle ended and he moved his stuff to a dryer. The third customer never came out of the restroom, but I heard the door open and close, footsteps heading for the exit. Just me and the machines now. Washer 7 kept running. 30-minute cycle, according to the timer. I tried to focus on other things, restocking the soap dispensers, mopping near the entrance, but my eyes kept drifting back to that machine. Something about the way the clothes moved inside looked wrong. Too dark, too heavy. When the cycle finally finished, I walked over. Slow steps, like approaching something that might bite. Through the glass door, I could see the clothes settled at the bottom of the drum. Dark fabric, jeans maybe, a shirt. But there was something else. Something that made my stomach clench up tight. Red. Lots of red, mixed in with the dark fabric. Too much red. The clothes were soaked in blood. Fresh blood from the look of it. Bright red stains that hadn't faded, hadn't been washed clean despite the full cycle. The water in the bottom of the drum had a pinkish tint. Some of the fabric looked torn, like it had been cut rather than worn. I backed away from the machine. Fast. My hands were shaking when I called Judy. 2:15 a.m., but she answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. What happened? No hello, no grogginess, just straight to business. Washer 7, I said. There are clothes in it. Bloody clothes, really bloody. Silence on the other end, long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she finally said. Don't touch anything. Don't let any customers near that machine. And Maxwell? Yeah? Don't open it. She hung up. 23 minutes later, Judy walked through the front door carrying a toolbox and wearing the expression of someone about to handle an unpleasant but familiar problem. She didn't look surprised, didn't ask questions, just walked straight to washer 7, looked through the glass, and nodded like she'd expected exactly what she saw. Help me move this, she said, indicating a rolling cart near the folding tables. We positioned it in front of the washer. Judy opened her toolbox and pulled out rubber gloves, a plastic tarp, and a pair of industrial tongs. Professional grade stuff, not the kind of thing most laundromat owners keep handy. You're going to have questions, she said, snapping on the gloves. I'll answer what I can. But first, I need you to understand something. This building has a history. She opened the washer door. The smell hit immediately, metallic, sharp, like pennies mixed with something organic and wrong. The clothes were worse up close, definitely blood-soaked, definitely fresh. A pair of jeans with what looked like knife cuts through the fabric. A white shirt turned mostly red. Other items I couldn't identify and didn't want to look at too closely. Judy used the tongs to transfer everything to plastic bags, working with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Multiple times. The old Riverside motel used to sit right here, she said, not looking up from her work. Torn down in 1995. 2-story place, 24 rooms. Room 7 was on the first floor, right about where this washer sits now. She sealed the first bag and started on the second. March 15th, 1995. Guy named Nicholas Vasquez killed his girlfriend in that room, stabbed her 14 times. Then he tried to wash the evidence in the motel's coin laundry, just 4 machines in a little room off the office. The second bag went into the cart. Judy started cleaning the inside of the washer with bleach and paper towels, scrubbing at stains that shouldn't have been there. Didn't work, of course. Blood doesn't wash out that easy, especially that much blood. So when he realized he couldn't clean up the mess, Vasquez went back to room 7 and shot himself in the head. She finished cleaning and closed the washer door. Motel shut down after that. Sat empty for 3 years before they finally tore it down. Construction crew built this place right over the old foundation. Didn't bother with any kind of cleansing ritual. Didn't sage the ground. Didn't do anything to clear out what might still be hanging around. Judy stripped off the gloves and dropped them in with the bags. That was a mistake. The 4th night was when everything changed, when I really understood what Judy hadn't told me. I'd been working alone for 2 nights since that whole business with the bloody clothes, and honestly, part of me hoped it was a one-time thing, some weird fluke that wouldn't happen again. But Tuesday night, my 4th shift overall, proved me wrong in ways I'm still trying to process. The evening started normal enough. A few customers trickled in and out. College kid with a single load of darks. Woman who looked like she'd just gotten off a late shift somewhere, washing scrubs that smelled like antiseptic. Old guy who always seemed to show up with exactly 4 loads and a paperback western. Same routine as before. By 2 a.m, the place was empty except for me and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I was restocking the soap dispensers when my phone buzzed. 2:17 a.m. exactly. The timestamp stuck in my head because that's when I heard it. The distinctive click and gurgle of washer 7 starting up. I froze with a soap refill cartridge halfway into dispenser 3. My stomach dropped because I knew, absolutely knew, that I'd checked every machine during my last circuit. Washer 7 had been empty, door hanging open like a mouth waiting for its next meal. No one had come in. The bell above the front door hadn't chimed. The customer log showed the last entry from over an hour ago. But there it was, running a full cycle. I set down the soap cartridge and walked over, my sneakers squeaking against the linoleum with each step. The sound seemed too loud in the empty laundromat. When I got close enough to see through the porthole window, what I saw made me understand that the bloody clothes weren't some isolated incident. Dark red water swirled inside the drum, not pink like you'd expect from someone washing out a cut finger or a bloody nose. Deep dark red, like what I'd seen 2 nights ago. But this time, I could see what was causing it. A man's shirt and jeans tumbled through the crimson water. White button down, now mostly red. Dark blue jeans with what looked like tears, no cuts along the legs. The fabric moved through the wash cycle, but there was something wrong with how it moved, something that made my skin crawl. The clothes weren't just tumbling randomly like normal laundry does. They moved with purpose, deliberate. The shirt's sleeves would extend toward the glass door during the drum's rotation, almost like they were reaching, grasping, the way someone might claw at a window if they were trapped behind it. I found myself pressing closer to the porthole, my breath fogging the glass. The sleeves kept reaching toward me, toward the door, and I swear I could feel something looking back at me through that dark water. Something desperate, something that wanted out. The wash cycle seemed to last forever. though my phone showed it was the standard 30 minutes. I stood there the entire time, watching those clothes move with their unnatural purpose, watching the sleeves reach and grasp at nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Maybe they were reaching for me. When the cycle finally ended, that familiar click and sigh that meant the drum had stopped spinning, I expected to see the same thing as before, the bloody clothes that would need Judy's professional cleanup routine. But when I looked through the porthole again, the washer contained only clean, warm water, crystal clear, no trace of clothing, no hint of blood. Just water that looked like it had never touched anything more suspicious than regular detergent. I stood there staring for maybe 5 minutes, waiting for something to reappear. But the water stayed clean, stayed clear. If I hadn't watched the whole thing happen, I'd never have believed it. That's when I pulled out my phone. Look, I'm not stupid. I knew nobody would believe me if I just told them about this. Hell, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. But if this was going to keep happening and something told me it was, I needed proof, documentation, something more solid than just my word against whatever this was. I started taking photos, video clips, screenshots of the timestamps, the empty washer before it started, the running cycle, the clear water afterward. Most of the photos came out blurry or dark, but some showed enough. Enough to prove I wasn't losing my mind anyway. And I was right about it happening again. Every night after that, Washer 7 would start itself at exactly 2:17 a.m. Always the same bloody water, always the same reaching clothes, always ending with nothing but clean water. The timing never varied. Not by a minute, not by a second. Like whatever was triggering it was following some kind of schedule. The empty cycles became part of my routine. I'd hear that click and gurgle, check my phone to confirm the time. 2:17, always 2:17, then walk over to document whatever I could capture. The clothes weren't always the same. Sometimes a dress, sometimes different shirts or pants, but always bloody, always moving with that deliberate reaching motion, always vanishing completely when the cycle ended. But the washer wasn't the only thing that started acting up. Remember Judy's rule about staying away from the storage room between 2 and 4 a.m.? Well, around 2:30 each night, right after Washer 7 finished its ghostly cycle, I'd hear footsteps coming from back there. Slow, measured pacing, back and forth across what sounded like a small room. The footsteps had weight to them, not the light tap of someone walking quietly, but the heavy tread of work boots or dress shoes hitting a hard floor. Along with the pacing came another sound, wet fabric being wrung out, the distinctive squish and drip of someone twisting water from cloth, over and over. Sometimes it went on for an hour, sometimes just 15 minutes, but always that same rhythm, pace, 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 then the wet ringing sound, then more pacing. I never tried to investigate. Judy's rules were starting to make perfect sense, and I wasn't about to test what might happen if I broke them. But the worst part, the thing that really got under my skin, happened when I made the mistake of using the employee restroom around 12:30 one night. I'd been holding it for an hour, telling myself I could wait until my shift ended, but finally, nature won out over supernatural paranoia. I figured it was only 12:30, not technically after midnight, like the rule said. Close enough to midnight to count as before, right? Wrong. I was washing my hands when I glanced up at the mirror above the sink. Instead of my own reflection, I saw a man's face staring back at me. Not young, maybe 40 or so, with dark hair and hollow eyes. But what really made me freeze was the thick red line around his neck. Rope burns. Deep ones that looked like they'd been there a long time. The man's mouth was moving, forming words I couldn't hear through the glass. His expression was urgent, desperate, like he was trying to warn me about something or tell me something important. But no sound came through, and I couldn't read his lips well enough to understand what he was trying to say. I blinked hard, thinking it was just fatigue or my imagination. But when I looked again, he was still there, still mouthing those silent words I couldn't quite make out. I figured the library would have answers. Had to be something in the records about that motel, about what happened in room 7. The Riverside Branch Library sat on Maple Street, one of those old Carnegie buildings with thick stone walls and tall windows that made you feel small walking up the steps. I'd been putting this off for 3 days, telling myself I didn't really need to know. But after seeing that face in the mirror every night, after watching those bloody clothes reach for me through the washer glass, yeah, I needed to know. The reference desk was tucked back in a corner where the afternoon light couldn't quite reach. Behind it sat a woman, maybe 55, with graying blonde hair pulled back in one of those neat librarian buns you see in movies. Wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan the color of oatmeal. Her name tag read Destiny Manning in careful block letters. "I'm looking for information about the Riverside Motel," I said. "It used to be where the laundromat is now, on Riverside Drive." She looked up from whatever she was typing, and her eyes were the kind of blue that reminded you of sky through winter clouds. "The old Riverside, that was torn down in 95, I think. What kind of information are you looking for?" "Anything. Newspaper articles, police reports if you have access. There was some kind of incident there before it closed." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. "Oh, that incident." She adjusted her glasses, and I caught something in her voice. Not surprise exactly, but like she'd been expecting someone to come asking eventually. "Let me pull up the newspaper archives. We have everything from the Herald going back to 1960. The microfilm machine hummed to life in a back corner of the reference section. Destiny had loaded 3 reels of film spanning March through April of 1994, and she showed me how to work the controls with the patience of someone who'd done this demonstration 1,000 times. The screen flickered green and white, showing page after page of news that felt like ancient history now. Clinton was president. Nobody had cell phones. The world moved slower then, or maybe it just seemed that way looking back. I found the first article on March 16th, 1994. Front page of the Herald, below the fold. "Triple murder-suicide rocks, Riverside Motel." The text was small on the screen, and I had to squint to read it clearly, but the details... Christ, the details were worse than anything I'd imagined. Nicholas Vasquez, 42 years old, had checked into room 7 on March 14th with his wife Jessica and their 2 children, Maria, age 8, and David, age 5. The family had been staying there for 3 days, apparently having some kind of marital problems. Jessica had been talking about leaving him, taking the kids to her sister's place in Portland. On the night of March 15th, around 11:30, other guests reported hearing shouting from room 7. Then screaming, then silence. The crime scene photos weren't included in the newspaper, thank God, but the reporter's description was detailed enough. Jessica had been stabbed 14 times with a kitchen knife Vasquez had brought from home. The children had been killed first, probably while they slept. Vasquez had covered their faces with pillows from the bed. I had to stop reading for a minute. Pushed back from the microfilm machine and rubbed my eyes. The library around me felt too quiet, too normal. Families browsing picture books at the children's section, teenagers doing homework at the study tables, all of them going about their regular Tuesday afternoon while I sat here reading about dead children. Destiny appeared beside me with a cup of water. "This is difficult material," she said quietly. "Would you like to take a break?" "I'm okay." I wasn't, but I needed to know the rest. "Thank you for the water." The next part of the article detailed what happened after the murders. Vasquez had spent hours in the motel's coin laundry, located right next to the office building. The night manager, a kid named Tommy Reeves, had been asleep in the back office and hadn't heard anything until the washing machines started running around midnight. He'd looked out and seen Vasquez loading bloody clothes into washer number 3. Subject appeared to be in an agitated state. the police report quoted in the article said. Witness observed him running the same load of clothing multiple times, becoming increasingly agitated when the stains would not come clean. Tommy Reeves had watched through the office window as Vasquez loaded and unloaded the same washer over and over, 17 times, according to the security footage the police reviewed later. 17 cycles of washing the same blood-soaked clothes, each time pulling them out still stained, each time becoming more frantic. The timeline in the police report was precise. Vasquez had started the laundry routine at 12:14 a.m. The last wash cycle ended at 5:43 a.m. Somewhere between then and 6:30, when maintenance worker Terry Jensen arrived to fix a broken ice machine, Vasquez had returned to the laundry room one final time. Jensen found him hanging from the ceiling, extension cords wrapped around his neck and tied to the exposed beam that ran across the room. The same beam that probably still existed under the drop ceiling of the current laundromat. The same space where I heard those footsteps pacing every night after the washer finished its cycle. I scrolled through more articles, finding follow-up stories over the next few weeks. The motel owner, a guy named Frank Cordova, had closed the place immediately after the murders. Couldn't get guests to stay there, couldn't sell it, couldn't do anything with it. The building sat empty for 3 years, while Cordova tried to figure out what to do with a property where a family had been slaughtered. Cursed ground, one article quoted him saying. Nobody wants to stay somewhere like that. Can't blame them. The final article I found was from August of 1997. Riverside Motel to be demolished for new development. Cordova had finally sold the property to a development company that planned to tear down the motel and build a strip mall. The article mentioned that several businesses had already signed leases, including a dry cleaner, a pizza place, and something called Sudsy's Laundromat. They'd built right over the old foundation. Hadn't moved the bones, hadn't done any kind of spiritual cleansing, hadn't even bothered to scrape away the concrete where room 7 had been. Just demolished the walls and built new ones, putting washer number 7 in the exact spot where Nicholas Vasquez had murdered his family. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the microfilm screen. The pieces fit together now like a jigsaw puzzle you'd been working on in the dark. The 2:17 a.m. timing. That's when Vasquez had started his final wash cycle, the one that ended at 5:43. The bloody clothes reaching through the washer glass, they weren't random supernatural activity. They were Nicholas, still trying to clean the blood 30 years later, still loading and reloading the same evidence, still watching it come out stained, still trapped in that moment when he realized no amount of washing would make his crime disappear. The face in the mirror with the rope burns around the neck. The desperate way his mouth moved, trying to tell me something. The footsteps in the storage room, pacing back and forth like a man who couldn't figure out what to do next. Did you find what you were looking for? Destiny's voice made me jump. I'd been so lost in putting the pieces together that I hadn't heard her approach. Yeah, I said, though finding it and wanting to know it were two very different things. I found it. She glanced at the screen, still showing the demolition article. Terrible thing, what happened there. I was working here when it all came out in the papers. People talked about it for months. She paused, adjusting her glasses. Are you researching this for school? Local history project? Something like that. I couldn't exactly tell her I worked nights at the place and that a dead man was trying to communicate with me through the bathroom mirror. Thank you for your help with the microfilm. Of course. We're here to help with research. She started to turn away, then stopped. You know, if you're interested in the supernatural aspects, there were some follow-up articles in the Alternative Weekly, the Phoenix Review. They did a piece about hauntings at the old motel site a few years after it closed. I could pull those for you if you'd like. I almost said no. I had enough information already, more than enough to understand what was happening at the laundromat. But something in her tone made me curious. Yeah, I'd like to see those. 20 minutes later, I was reading about ghost hunters and paranormal investigators who'd snuck onto the abandoned motel property between 1995 and 97. Most of it was the usual nonsense. cold spots and electronic voice phenomena and photographs with suspicious blurry shapes. But one article caught my attention. An interview with a psychic medium named Elena Castillo, who claimed she'd made contact with Nicholas Vasquez's spirit during a seance held in Room 7's ruins. According to Castillo, Vasquez was trapped in what she called a loop of guilt and compulsion. He couldn't move on because he was still trying to undo what he'd done, still trying to clean away the evidence of his crime. The blood on his clothes had become a symbol of his guilt, and washing them had become an obsession that followed him into death. "He's not malicious," the article quoted her saying. "He's tormented. He knows he can't change what happened, but he can't stop trying. The washing, the cleaning, it's become his purgatory." I understood now why Nicholas kept appearing in the mirror, why his mouth moved so desperately. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to ask for help. I'd been working at Sudsy's for nearly a week when Judy finally told me about the others. She showed up around 2:30 that morning, just after the storage room sounds had stopped. I was mopping near the folding tables when I heard her key in the front door. The fluorescence caught the gray in her hair as she stepped inside, and I could see exhaustion in the way her shoulders sat. She wasn't carrying her toolbox this time. "We need to talk," she said. I set the mop in the bucket. The wheels squeaked as I rolled it against the wall. "About what?" "About why those rules exist." She walked to the counter and leaned against it. Her fingers drummed once against the formica surface. "About the people who worked this shift before you." Something cold settled in my stomach. I'd been wondering about that, wondering why the job posting stayed up for 3 weeks before I applied, why she'd hired me so quickly, why she'd answered her phone at 2 a.m. like she'd been waiting for my call. "How many?" I asked. 3. She looked toward washer 7. It sat quiet now, door closed, but I could still picture those bloody clothes reaching through the glass. Dylan Richards, Ashley Cole, Ronnie Solomon. The names hit different when you knew they belonged to dead people. I'd imagined them as folks who'd just quit, found better jobs maybe, moved away. Normal stuff. What happened to them? Judy's fingers stopped drumming. She studied my face for a long moment, like she was deciding how much truth I could handle. Then she sighed. "Dylan worked here for 6 weeks last fall. 28 years old. Good worker mostly. But he got curious about washer 7. She nodded toward the machine. 3rd week of October, around 2:45 in the morning, he decided he needed to see what was inside that washer when it was running. My mouth went dry. I'd thought about that myself, wondered what would happen if I just reached for the door handle while those clothes were reaching back at me. He opened it, Judy continued. Mid-cycle. Bloody water everywhere, all over the floor, splashing up the walls. But that wasn't the worst part. I waited. The laundromat felt too quiet around us. The machine pulled him in. Her voice stayed level, matter of fact, like she was reading from a report. Sucked him right through that door. Don't ask me how. Physics don't work normal around here after midnight. I found him the next morning wrapped around the agitator. Every bone in his body was broken. Arms twisted backward. Legs bent in directions they shouldn't go. Face. She stopped. Shook her head. Coroner said it looked like he'd been through a commercial meat grinder. Jesus Christ. I'd been standing right next to that thing for a week, watching those clothes reach toward the glass. If I'd been just a little more curious. Ashley was next, Judy said. 24 years old, lasted 2 months this past winter. She heard the sounds from the storage room. Same ones you've probably been hearing. Pacing, wet fabric being wrung out. She convinced herself someone was back there who needed help. I knew exactly what sound she meant. That steady rhythm of footsteps, the squeezing, ringing noise that went on for an hour some nights. It did sound like someone in distress. January 15th, around 3 a.m. She jimmied the storage room lock with a screwdriver. Judy's voice got quieter. I found her hanging from the ceiling pipes. Laundry detergent poured down her throat until her lungs were full of it. The industrial stuff we keep back there. Concentrated chemicals. Burns everything it touches. My stomach turned. I'd walked past that storage room dozens of times, heard those sounds, felt that pull to investigate. The lock always looked so flimsy. And Ronnie? Ronnie Solomon, 35, worked here for 3 weeks in March. He thought the bathroom rule was stupid. Judy's eyes found mine. Sound familiar. Heat crept up my neck. I'd used that bathroom after midnight myself just a few nights ago. Seen that face in the mirror with the rope burns around his neck. Ronnie figured 12:30 was close enough to midnight. What's the difference, right? She wasn't really asking. March 22nd, I found him face down in the toilet, drowned. His lungs were full of wash water, the same bloody water that comes out of washer 7. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. One of the dryers clicked as it cooled down. Normal sounds, but they felt different now. Everything felt different. The face in the mirror, I said. That's him, Ronnie? No. Judy straightened up. That's someone else, someone who's been here longer. Nicholas Vasquez, had to be. The man who'd started all this back in 1994, hanging himself in the coin laundry with extension cords around his neck. The rope burns made sense now. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you've been following the rules so far. Because you called me about washer 7 instead of opening it yourself. Because you're still alive. She walked toward the door, then stopped. And because I need someone working this shift who understands what they're dealing with. The weight of it settled on me like a heavy blanket. 3 people dead. 3 people who'd broken the rules I carried in my back pocket every night. Dylan had opened washer 7. Ashley had entered the storage room. Ronnie had used the bathroom after midnight. Each rule wasn't just a guideline. It was a boundary. A line drawn around something that killed people for crossing it. It's territorial, I said. Judy nodded. Nights belong to him, the whole building. But he follows patterns, has limits. As long as you respect those limits. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. As long as you respect the limits, you live. Cross them, and you end up like Dylan, Ashley, or Ronnie. I thought about the bloody clothes reaching through the washer glass, the way they moved with purpose, like hands trying to grab something, the footsteps in the storage room, pacing back and forth, hour after hour, the face in the bathroom mirror, mouth moving silently. Nicholas Vasquez wasn't just haunting this place. He owned it. From midnight until dawn, this was his domain, his territory. And the rules weren't suggestions. They were the terms of a treaty. Stay on your side of the line, and he'd stay on his. Break the treaty, and he'd kill you. The knowledge sat heavy in my chest as I watched Judy unlock the front door. Every shift from now on would be a careful dance around something that had already claimed 3 lives. Every night would mean walking through a building that belonged to a dead man who'd murdered his family and then spent eternity trying to wash the blood from his hands. I pulled the rule card from my pocket and read it again. 6 simple sentences that were the only thing standing between me and ending up twisted around a washing machine agitator, or hanging from ceiling pipes with detergent in my lungs, or drowned in a toilet full of bloody water. 6 rules that meant the difference between going home at dawn and never going home at all. I should have been more careful about the rules. Should have memorized every word instead of thinking I understood them well enough. It was my 7th night, maybe 8th. I lose track when you're working graveyard shifts. And I was doing my regular rounds. Same routine I'd been following since Judy handed me that laminated card. Walk the circuit, check the machines, make sure nobody's stuffing tennis shoes in the dryers or leaving wet clothes to mildew. Basic stuff. But that night, something felt off from the moment I started counting. I always count the washers when I walk the line. 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 7. It's automatic, like counting steps when you're walking upstairs in the dark. Except this time, when I got to the end of the row, my count didn't stop at 7. 8. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, staring at the machines lined up against the wall. Counted again. Slower this time, pointing at each one like I was some kind of kindergartner learning numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There was definitely an 8th washer. It sat right between number 6 and 7, which should have been impossible since I'd walked this same line every night for a week. The machine looked identical to all the others. Same white enamel finish, same chrome door handle, same coin slots on top. But it was there, solid as the floor under my feet, humming quietly like it had been running for hours. That's when I realized what I'd done. Rule 4. Count to 30 if lights flicker 3 times in a row before moving. I'd been so focused on counting the machines that I'd counted. The rule said count to 30, not count anything else. Maybe that was the point. Maybe counting anything during certain hours was what triggered whatever this was. The phantom washer, that's what I started calling it in my head, never stopped running. Most machines have cycles, right? Wash, rinse, spin, done. This one just kept going. The drum rotated with that steady mechanical rhythm, but the water level never changed and the timer display, Christ, the timer display. It showed permanent press in those red digital numbers, but underneath where it should have counted down from 38 minutes or however long permanent press takes, the timer was counting backward from infinity. I'm not being poetic here. The display actually showed the sideways 8 symbol, then started ticking down. Infinity -1, infinity -2, infinity -3. I pressed my face against the porthole window, cupping my hands around my eyes to block the fluorescent light reflection. Inside the drum, tumbling with the water and whatever soap suds were in there, was Nicholas Vasquez. Not clothes that looked like a person, not shadows playing tricks. Nicholas Vasquez himself, the guy from the newspaper photos I'd studied at the library. His decomposed face pressed against the glass every time the drum rotated toward the front, mouth stretched open in what had to be a scream, even though no sound came through the washer's insulated door. His hollow eyes, the same ones I'd been seeing in the bathroom mirror, stared directly at me every time he rolled past the porthole. His body moved wrong inside the drum, too loose, like all his bones had been broken and reset at angles that didn't match human anatomy. Arms bent backward at the elbows, legs twisted around each other, neck. His neck hung at an angle that should have been impossible even for a dead man. But he was conscious in there, aware. His eyes tracked my movement when I shifted from side to side, and his mouth kept forming words I couldn't hear through the glass and water. The worst part was how the water stayed clean. No matter how long Nicholas tumbled inside that drum, the water remained clear. Like whatever stains he was trying to wash out weren't coming from his body. They were coming from somewhere else entirely. I stood there watching him for, hell, I don't know how long. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. Time gets weird when you're staring at something that shouldn't exist. The phantom washer just kept running its impossible cycle, counting backward from infinity, while Nicholas Vasquez screamed his silent scream and twisted through the water like he was drowning and falling at the same time. On my final night, and I knew it was my final night even before I found the note, everything changed. I'd been avoiding washer 7 since the phantom machine appeared, walking a wider path around that end of the row, but when I came in for my shift at 11:45, there was something tucked under the regular washer 7. Just a corner of white paper sticking out from beneath the machine, like someone had slid it there and not pushed it all the way under. I knelt down on the cold linoleum and worked the paper free. It was notebook paper, the kind with 3 holes punched on the side and blue lines running across. The handwriting was shaky, like whoever wrote it had been nervous or, well, like their hands weren't quite steady anymore. "Please help me get clean," It said in pencil that had been pressed hard enough to leave indentations in the paper. "I've been washing for 30 years, but the blood won't come out. It never comes out. I can't stop trying, but I can't get clean. Please help me get clean." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just those 4 sentences in handwriting that looked like it came from someone who'd forgotten how to hold a pencil properly. I folded the note and stuck it in my back pocket, next to the rule card Judy had given me. 2 pieces of paper that somehow explained everything and nothing about what was happening in this building after midnight. The storage room door was open. I noticed it when I was walking back from Washer 7, still thinking about the note. The door stood wide open, showing the dark space beyond where Judy kept the industrial detergent containers and cleaning supplies. But I knew for certain, that door had been locked when I arrived for my shift. I'd tested the handle out of habit, same as every night. The door opened inward, into the storage room, and from where I stood I could see the shapes of plastic containers stacked along the far wall. 5-gallon jugs of liquid detergent, boxes of powder soap, bottles of fabric softener arranged in neat rows like Judy had organized them. Everything looked normal except for the figure standing among the containers. Nicholas Vasquez stood with his back to the door, facing the wall where the detergent was stored. His neck was twisted at an angle that would have killed a living person, rotated almost completely around so his face pointed backward while his body faced forward. Extension cords hung from his throat like some kind of grotesque jewelry, trailing down his chest and across the floor in loops and coils that seemed to move slightly, even though there was no breeze in the storage room. He wasn't moving, wasn't turning to look at me even though his twisted neck should have let him see me standing in the doorway. Just stood there among the cleaning supplies, perfectly still except for those extension cords that swayed like they were underwater. I couldn't stop staring at the extension cords hanging from his throat until he lifted his arm. The movement was wrong, joints bending in directions that shouldn't exist, like watching someone try to gesture underwater. Nicholas pointed toward the corner where industrial detergent sat stacked in neat rows, but something was happening there, materializing out of nothing. A pile of fabric taking shape between the boxes of Tide and the gallon jugs of bleach. The clothes looked exactly like what I'd seen through Washer 7's window. Dark jeans with knife cuts running down both legs. A white button-down shirt soaked so thoroughly in blood it had turned mostly crimson. But here they weren't tumbling in sudsy water. They just existed, solid and dripping onto the concrete floor. Then they weren't there anymore. I blinked and saw only the detergent boxes, counted to 3, and the clothes reappeared. Same pile, same blood pooling underneath. Same impossible presence that made my skin crawl. "Jesus," I whispered. The pile vanished again. I kept watching, timing it in my head. 15 seconds of nothing. Then the clothes would fade back into view like someone was adjusting a dimmer switch. Always in the exact same position. Jeans folded underneath, shirt draped on top, sleeves spread wide like they were reaching for something. This was what 30 years looked like, not the washing. This, the endless cycle of evidence appearing and disappearing, never staying gone, never staying clean. I thought about Elena Castillo's words from the newspaper archives, a loop of guilt and compulsion. The bloody pile flickered back into existence, and I noticed something I'd missed before. The shirt wasn't just stained, it was still wet, fresh wet. Like the blood had been spilled minutes ago instead of 3 decades. Each time the clothes materialized, they brought that metallic smell with them. Sharp and coppery and wrong. Nicholas lowered his arm and turned to face me. His neck made a grinding sound like old hinges. That's when the intercom crackled to life. I'd never noticed the speaker before. Mounted high on the storage room wall, probably left over from when this was the motel's laundry facility. The plastic grill was yellowed and cracked, and static poured out of it like radio interference. But underneath the white noise, I heard something else. A voice. "Can you hear me?" I looked at Nicholas. His mouth wasn't moving, but the words were coming through the speaker in a voice that sounded like gravel scraping against concrete. Rough and damaged, like someone had been screaming for hours. "I know you can hear me," the voice continued. "You've been watching. Every night." I nodded before remembering that was stupid. He could see me just fine. 30 years, the voice said through the crackling speaker. 30 years I've been trying to wash them clean. The bloody clothes materialized again, and this time they stayed visible longer. 20 seconds, 25. I could see individual drops of blood hitting the floor, each one making a tiny splash that echoed in the storage room like raindrops in a cave. "The blood won't come out," Nicholas said, and I heard something in his voice that made my chest tight. Not anger, not rage, just exhaustion. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that comes from trying the same impossible thing over and over until your mind starts to crack. "I've tried everything. Hot water, cold water, every detergent they make. 17 times that first night, then every night since. The machine runs, the clothes tumble, but when the cycle ends..." The voice trailed off into static. The clothes vanished, reappeared, vanished again. "The guilt made them permanent," he said. "That's what the psychic woman told those investigators. She was right. I can see the stains even when there's nothing there. I can smell Jessica's blood even when the clothes are gone. It's in my head now, in my eyes, in my lungs." I wanted to back out of the storage room, but my feet wouldn't move. Something about his voice, the raw honesty in it, kept me rooted in place. "You know what I did?" Nicholas continued. "You researched it. The library. I saw you reading about us." Us. Like his family was still here somehow. "Jessica was going to take the children to Portland. She had the tickets, had it all planned out." The static grew thicker, making his words harder to understand. I couldn't let them leave. Couldn't let her take Maria and David away from me." The clothes appeared again, and this time I could see more detail. Small tears in the shirt fabric that might have been knife wounds. Dark stains on the jeans that weren't just blood, other fluids I didn't want to identify. "But afterward," he said, standing there with the knife, seeing what I'd done, I knew I had to make it right somehow, had to clean up the mess, had to wash away what happened. I thought about Tommy Reeves, the night manager who'd watched through the office window. 17 wash cycles between midnight and dawn. The same bloody clothes going round and round while Nicholas waited for a miracle that never came. "The bleach," he said suddenly, and his voice got stronger through the speaker. "I never tried bleach." My stomach dropped. I knew where this was going. They didn't have any at the motel. Just regular detergent and fabric softener, but here... The voice paused, and I heard what sounded like breathing even though Nicholas was dead. "Here there's bleach. Industrial strength. The kind that can clean anything." The bloody pile appeared one more time, and I swear the stains looked darker, deeper, like they were growing instead of fading. "Please," Nicholas said, and that word hit me like a punch to the chest. "Please help me get clean. Add the bleach to washer 7 during the next cycle. Let me try one more time with the right chemicals." I stared at the clothes, at Nicholas with his impossible neck angle, at the extension cords swaying around his throat like living things. "If I can get the blood out," he said, "if I can finally make them clean, then maybe I can rest. Maybe I can stop. Maybe this can all be over." The intercom went quiet except for the static. The bloody clothes faded away, leaving just empty space between the detergent boxes. Nicholas stood perfectly still, waiting for my answer. But I couldn't give him one. Not yet. because I knew what those rules meant now. Judy had spelled it out clear enough. Dylan Richards opened the washer mid-cycle and got pulled inside. Ashley Cole broke into the storage room and ended up hanging from the pipes. Ronnie Solomon used the bathroom after midnight and drowned in bloody wash water. The rules weren't suggestions. They were a treaty, terms of coexistence that kept Nicholas contained to his patterns and schedules. Breaking them meant death. But what he was asking, was it breaking the rules? Or was it something else entirely? I thought about Elena Castillo's seance, about a spirit trapped in guilt and compulsion, about 30 years of the same impossible task, night after night with no end in sight. Maybe helping him break the cycle would set him free. Or maybe it would give him enough power to kill again. My watch read 2:14 a.m. The numbers glowed green in the storage room's dim light, counting down to the moment when Washer 7 would start its nightly routine. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to decide whether to help a child killer find peace or stick to the rules that had kept me alive this long. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on my shoulders like a physical thing. The decision. The responsibility. The knowledge that whatever I chose, there was no going back. 2 minutes and 58 seconds until 2:17 a.m. and Washer 7 would begin another cycle of supernatural torment. My watch read 2:16 a.m., 58 seconds. Standing there in that storage room with Nicholas pointing at those blood-soaked clothes that kept vanishing and reappearing every 15 seconds, I knew I had maybe 30 more heartbeats to decide. The extension cords hanging from his throat swayed like they were underwater, and his voice through the intercom had gone quiet, waiting. 57 seconds. I thought about Dylan Richards getting pulled into that washer, every bone broken. Ashley Cole hanging from pipes with detergent in her lungs. Ronnie Solomon face down in bloody toilet water. 3 people who'd broken the rules and paid for it with their lives. But this wasn't breaking a rule, was it? This was something else. Nicholas had asked for help. Not demanded, not threatened, asked. 55 seconds. The bloody clothes materialized again between the Tide boxes and bleach jugs, that white shirt with sleeves spread wide like it was trying to embrace something it could never reach. Dark jeans with knife cuts along the legs, fresh blood still dripping 30 years later because guilt doesn't age. I grabbed the industrial bleach jug from the shelf, heavy plastic container, maybe 2 gallons, with a safety cap that required you to push down and twist. My hands were shaking, but I got it open. The smell hit me immediately, sharp, chemical burn that made my eyes water. 47 seconds. I'm going to help you, I said to the storage room, to Nicholas, to those clothes that kept appearing and disappearing like a broken movie projector. The extension cords around his throat stopped swaying. 35 seconds. I walked out of the storage room, bleach jug in both hands because it was heavy, and I didn't want to drop it. 28 seconds. The laundromat felt different walking back through it. Quieter somehow, like the building itself was holding its breath. My footsteps echoed off the linoleum and the fluorescent lights seemed brighter, more focused, like they were spotlights pointing toward Washer 7. 22 seconds. I could see the machine from across the room, sitting there innocent and empty with its door closed. Just another washer in a row of washers. But I knew better now, knew what was coming. 15 seconds. I positioned myself next to Washer 7, bleach jug ready. The safety cap was already off, sitting on top of the folding table where I'd set it. Chemical smell rising from the open container made my nose burn. 10 seconds. My watch hit 2:17 a.m. exactly. The washer clicked on. Water started filling the drum with that familiar rushing sound, but this time I could hear something else underneath it. A sigh. Like the building itself was exhaling after holding its breath for 30 years. The water turned red immediately, dark crimson swirling in patterns that didn't follow normal physics, spiraling upward instead of settling, forming shapes that almost looked like reaching hands before dissolving back into liquid. The clothes appeared in the drum, white button-down shirt, sleeves extended toward the glass like always, dark jeans with those terrible knife cuts. Both items heavy with blood that had never dried, never aged, never forgiven. I didn't wait, didn't hesitate, just lifted that bleach jug and poured. The industrial-strength bleach hit the bloody water like acid on metal. Steam rose from the drum immediately, white vapor that smelled like chlorine and something else, something cleaner. The red water started changing color, from dark crimson to pink to pale rose to nothing at all. Clear water. Clean water. The clothes inside the drum stopped reaching. The shirt sleeves relaxed, floating naturally with the wash cycle instead of grasping desperately at the glass. The jeans settled into normal fabric movement, heavy denim tumbling the way wet clothes were supposed to tumble. And then the blood stains started fading. It happened slowly at first. The dark red splotches on the white shirt began turning lighter, pink, then pale pink, then nothing. Just clean white cotton that looked like it had never seen violence. The knife cuts in the jeans sealed themselves. The torn fabric knitted back together until there were just normal jeans, dark blue denim without a mark on them. I pressed my face to the porthole window, watching the transformation. The water stayed clear now. Clean. The clothes moved with the gentle rhythm of a normal wash cycle. No more desperate reaching. No more supernatural desperation. The washing machine hummed its usual mechanical song. 30 minutes of cleaning. 30 minutes of finally getting clean. I stayed there the entire time, watching through that little round window, watching 30 years of guilt dissolve in bleach and hot water, watching a murderer's obsession finally find peace through the simple act of someone else caring enough to help. When the cycle finished, the washer clicked off with its normal end-of-cycle sound. The drum stopped spinning. The water drained away. But the clothes didn't disappear this time. They stayed right there in the drum. Clean white shirt, folded neatly. Clean dark jeans, no cuts, no stains, no blood. Just normal laundry waiting to be removed. I reached for the washer door handle, then stopped. Remembered the rules. Never open any washer that starts itself. But this wasn't the same anymore, was it? The laundromat felt different. Lighter, somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the building's foundation. The fluorescent lights hummed their normal electrical buzz instead of that weird flickering they'd been doing. The air smelled like bleach and clean laundry instead of metallic blood. That's when I saw him. Nicholas stood next to the folding table, but he looked different now. The extension cords were gone from his throat. The rope burns had faded. His face wasn't decomposed anymore, just tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. Like a man who'd been working without sleep for 30 years. He looked at me with clear eyes instead of hollow sockets. Human eyes. Grateful eyes. "Thank you," he said, and his voice came from his mouth instead of through the intercom. Normal voice. Quiet. Peaceful. He nodded once, a simple gesture of acknowledgement, of gratitude, of finally being able to rest. Then he started fading, not vanishing like the clothes had been doing, dissolving, like he was made of morning mist that the sunrise was burning away. His edges became transparent first, then the transparency spread inward until I could see the folding table through his chest. He smiled, actually smiled. The first time I'd seen any expression on his face except desperation and guilt. "I can go home now," he whispered. And then he was gone. Just gone. No trace left behind except the smell of bleach and the sound of empty machines running their normal cycles. The storage room door swung shut with a soft click. When I walked over and tested the handle, it was locked again. Properly locked, like it had been every night before tonight. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 2:47 a.m. The supernatural wash cycle was over, and for the first time since I'd started working here, I didn't hear any footsteps from the storage room, no wet fabric being wrung out, no pacing back and forth, just silence. Normal nighttime laundromat. Silence. The building felt empty now in a way it never had before. Not haunted empty, just vacant. Like a hotel room after checkout, waiting for new guests who might actually be able to rest. I walked my normal circuit around the machines. But Washer 7 was just Washer 7 now. Regular machine with regular capacity and regular coin slots. The phantom 8th washer was gone completely, like it had never existed. Everything was normal. Finally, completely normal. Nicholas Vasquez had spent 30 years trying to wash away the blood of his family, trapped in an endless cycle of guilt that no amount of detergent could break. But sometimes the dead just need someone living to help them finish what they started. Someone willing to pour the bleach and watch the stains fade away forever. The laundromat was quiet now, and it would stay quiet. The cycle was broken, and the dead could finally rest.